Hi, welcome to the University of York's School of Social and Political Sciences seminar series. I'm Rebecca Viney, a third year Social and Political Sciences student here. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our guest for this afternoon, Professor Bev Skeggs from Goldsmiths, University of London. Today you'll be delivering a talk entitled Caricature and Character, Performing Personhoods on Reality Television. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the main messages of the talk?
Okay. Well, it's part of a big long project that I did with Helen Ward and Nancy Toomey, funded by the ESRC. And we began looking at how the working class were completely delegitimated on reality television. So how they were recruited to perform their lack of value in order to show that they needed transforming. And how this performance of their lack of value was seen to be very personal and individualised and completely divorced from the conditions of their own person production. So all their behaviour was seen to be something that was psychological, individualised, pathological, rather than seeing as a completely different culture.
Can I ask, what sort of ways did they display this lack of value? Was it in the personality?
Right, there's lots of different ways. I mean, you can go from the really, really abject programmes like Ibiza Uncovered, and all. It's got numerous manifestations now, mutations we call them actually, where people just go on holiday and get very, very drunk, and the camera just focuses on vomit, sex, and bits of bodies. So that's the real abject bad behaviour stuff. To the having to perform in a new environment like Wife Swap, where you set kind of aspirational women against very badly behaving women and then you make them fight out at the end. Or they're going to a completely different country and being completely unable to handle it, but having no idea what it would mean to do that. Or faking it, that's a good one, kind of performing in a completely different environment. There's thousands of them. I mean, that's the problem. There's so many of these programmes, and they basically, the real basic formula to them is just making people perform badly in order to make the audience either laugh at them, feel sorry for them, do schadenfreude and say, thank God that's not me, and really to pathologise them. Say these people have complete lack of value. And the message of the paper is really what we've seen since the 1980s is progressive symbolic devaluation of the working class, so that it's okay to withdraw benefits from them, it's okay to kind of treat them to various different forms of symbolic violence or economic violence, because actually they are pathological, there's problems with them. So it's kind of the reinvention of the deserving, undeserving, poor dimension that we used to have.
It certainly sounds relatable. If you think about looking at the shows that are on TV, it does sound like you can see it very much across the board. Is it particularly with women that they're shown that way?
Yeah.
Or is it?
Yeah, mainly with women. There are some ones about working class white men fighting. Now, interestingly, there's a whole race dimension to this, because the producers do not usually make black families or black women perform badly, because if they did, they'd be accused of racism. And they don't want to be accused of racism, so they pick on the white working class. It's so much easier as a target. So there's all sorts of different kind of other dimensions built in, but it's usually white working class women, and they pick a very, if you watch them repeatedly, as we had to do, what you see, there's a very, very particular type, and it's a type that's based on excess. So it's excessive noise, excessive eating, excessive glamour, excessive presence, just excessive behaviour in general. And part of the message of all these programmes is that you have to control your excess, and your excess is a result of faulty psychology. Where in fact working class excess is about enjoying yourself because your life's really hard. So it kind of doesn't, the different culture is radically different. Do you think it's
indicative of a wider sort of class stratification in society?
Most definitely. And I think what's interesting and that's not often picked up on is that the middle classes since the 1980s have become increasingly insecure through things like divorce, where families are split up and they have to kind of reorganise themselves via moving through space. But also in terms of cuts in the welfare state, cuts in the welfare state are often hit the middle class, or often are bigger cuts for the middle class, but it doesn't hurt them as much because they have much more protection. But cuts in education and health and things like tuition fees, of course, will hurt the middle classes, but they can protect themselves to some extent. What happens is the middle class are actually losing quite a lot of wealth and value in comparison to kind of the super rich. And what we see is they're trying to cling on to it. And they're really, really desperately trying to cling on to it. And the way they do that is often to show their distance from the working class.
Do you think your research has any particular relevance to my generation or those of university age?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're born into a situation where a lot of this has been taking place. And I think when I was writing the paper for today, it was very interesting because I go back to an old research project that was conducted at the beginning of Thatcherism in the 1980s. And what's interesting is that the politics of the class divisions are very similar. It's just been a phenomenal intensification of symbolic devaluation that we see now. So what's important, I think, for your generation is to recognise these historical processes. So, it's always white working class women that are picked on when there's a crisis in the nation. Interestingly, they were picked on for being contagious and having venereal diseases in the Victorian period. They're always the dangerous group. So to notice those historical repetitions, and I think very importantly to notice your own participation in the creation of those distinctions and symbolic devaluation. I think that's incredibly important because class is a relationship. It's not just like a stratification where people are fitted into a position. It's a relationship that's dynamic and it's lived. And so to understand your position in it and how you're responsible in various different ways for that reproduction.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay.
We look forward to your talk later on.
Thank you.